Before we start this video, take the time to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching tonight. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Our topics tonight include a look at Joe Biden's first real press conference. And then we talk about the Chinese government spreading lies in retaliation against fashion brands who are boycotting Xinjiang cotton all over that situation. Last, a new detail surrounding Hunter Biden comes out as related to a 2018 scandal where he possessed a gun and in which the Secret Service was involved. So today was the very first press conference held by Joe Biden. Keep in mind, I recorded this bit just before the press conference and I'll give you the reaction after. So whether he takes the questions from the reporters that are going to be pre-planned or on the spot is going to be the question. And I wrote this part before the press conference with a few questions, and let's just see what my reaction is after it. Now, my guess is that they have pre-planned questions for him already, and had a few questions myself planned if I were to attend the press conference. So here's the ones I thought would be pretty good to ask. Let's see if any of them gets answered. The first one will be, will you declare the border wall a crisis, and what is your plan for the immigration surge, as well as in terms of the media coverage? You know, something along those lines to get him warmed up. And then maybe a follow-up like, how do you see the illegal immigrants saying that Biden is the reason they came? And then after that, maybe something about his son Hunter with this new scandal coming out. As well, what is his plan for the people who's lost their jobs from Keystone XL or from his energy policies? And maybe even his comment with regards to Putin, Vladimir Putin, or versus his stance on China. Let's see if any of these topics get asked or if he answers any of them. I'll see you after the press conference. Okay, so I've just finished watching the press conference and I want to give you some of my reaction. As Richard Grinnell puts it, it is disaster, bumbling, confusion, old stories, talking points. This entire press conference, so Biden said that, he pretty much said, here's the deal, about 15 times, if I counted correctly. And then he said he came into the Senate 120 years ago. I assume that is a mistake. And the entire press conference felt like this organized drama, stage play, where all the reporters had pre-coordinated questions for him. And Joe Biden still got mad that some reporters decided to push him a little bit. He blamed Trump for all of the current immigration issues, saying that people were starving, especially underage kids were starving because Trump wouldn't let them in. And then he lied a bunch about all these information that he was giving out.
The idea that I'm going to say, which I would never do, that if an unaccompanied child ends up at the border, we're just going to let him starve to death and stay on the other side. No previous administration did that either, except Trump. I'm not going to do it.
Let's watch some of his reactions to questions asked by reporters on issues like immigration, on his border transparency, on issues with China, and also how he plans to deal with the filibusters.
Filibuster. You know, with regard to the filibuster, I believe we should go back to a position of the filibuster that existed just when I came to the United States Senate 120 years ago. So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, we're going to get a lot done. And if we have to, if there's complete lockdown and chaos as a consequence of the filibuster, then we'll have to go beyond what I'm talking about.
When it comes to the filibusters, Biden repeatedly said it was the biggest stepping block from getting what the Democrats want, except for the last bit of times we've seen here, it seems that the filibuster in the last year, as he criticized it for, was the issue that prevented Democratic policies. Whereas, as we know, last year, every motion that challenged the filibuster came from Democrats. When asked what his plans are for 2024, he says he will be running, but he doesn't know what will happen in 4 years. I wonder why.
Sounds like you're moving closer to eliminating the filibuster. Is that correct?
I answered your question.
You also just made some news by saying that you are going to run for re-election.
I said that is my expectation.
So is that a yes that you are running for re-election?
Look, I don't know where you guys come from, man. I've never been able to travel. I'm a great respecter of fate. I've never been able to plan 3.5 years ahead for certain.
And if you do run, will Vice President Harris be on your ticket?
I would fully expect that to be the case. She's doing a great job. She's a great partner.
Joe Biden also says, I have no idea if there will be a Republican Party in 2024. That is quite alarming, because maybe they will finally by then have established the one-party rule.
I pointed out to him, no leader can be sustained in his position or her position unless they represent the values of the country. And I said, Mr. President, as I've told you before, Americans value the notion of freedom. America values human rights. We don't always live up to our expectations, but it's a value system. We are founded on that principle. And as long as you and your country continues to so blatantly violate human rights, we are going to continue in an unrelenting way to call to the attention of the world and make it clear what's happening. And he understood that. I made it clear that no American president, at least one did, but no American president ever backed down from speaking out of what's happening to the Uyghurs, what's happening in Hong Kong, what's happening in country. That's who we are. The moment a president walks away from that, as the last one did, is the moment we begin to lose our legitimacy around the world.
When it comes to China, an important question was raised in terms of, you can say everything about China and Xi Jinping, but what are going to be your real actions that Joe Biden will do to actually counter China's expansion? Unfortunately, it seems no one has asked from the reporters about Hunter Biden today. In our second topic today, in the latest attempt to stay as the spotlight of the world, China has once again decided to not play by the rules, or any rules in general, promoting nationalistic feelings among its people and is now canceling fashion brands. The reason is these brands are boycotting cotton harvested from Xinjiang's Uyghur region. Now, this event may help you understand why the Chinese people under communist control acts so out of control sometimes. So the story is H&M and Nike, two quite common household brands, are now being boycotted among a dozen or of other brands as well. And that's happening in China. The reason was a statement made last year by these companies, precisely on March 20th for H&M, that they were concerned with the human rights condition in Xinjiang and will not use cotton from that region. Nike and Adidas came under fire on Chinese social media on Thursday after Beijing's propaganda strikes against Swedish fashion brand H&M, sparked by the company's expression of concern about labor conditions in Xinjiang. Now you got to know this, the statements made by the brands were from last year, right? So this is, at this moment, this is considered a purely retaliatory move by the CCP, as these companies made the statements a while back. So there's no reason for them to have done anything now when they could have done something back then. Now, partly of the reason is that earlier this week, China denied allegations of human rights abuses by its officials in the western region of Xinjiang after the European Union, United States, Britain, and Canada imposed sanctions on the officials. Of course, Beijing hit back with the retaliatory sanctions on European lawmakers, scholars, and institutions. So the issue here is that these companies are concerned with obviously the human rights violations and the abuses against the Uyghurs, not the actual cotton production itself. And here comes the hilarious part. Chinese internet users are now publicly destroying their precious Nike sneakers and boycotting the brands. Some go the extreme by cutting off the clothes. Check out this video.
It's the time to focus on the Chinese human rights problem. I'm Chinese, I live in China. I can tell you it's not even true. It's fake! You should focus on the real problem. Your t-shirt quality problem, Your t-shirt is so sexy, I can even see my face through the t-shirt, do you know that? So that is your t-shirt? I live in China. I travel a lot. I used to live in Hong Kong, I actually live in Xinjiang, and I have a lot of friends from Xinjiang, and they are highly supporting the government and party. So why do you think you know more than us? Who are you? The agents from CIA or the reporter from BBC?
I don't know what to say. Here's another one from Radio Free Asia.
吃我们的，喝我们的，啊，还砸我们的锅，对不对？
And you really showed those clothes who's boss. Internet users are also targeted the Better Cotton Initiative, which is a group that promotes sustainable cotton production and which said in October it was suspending its approval of cotton sourced from Xinjiang for the 2020 to 2021 season, citing human rights concerns. The members of BCI includes Nike, Adidas, and H&M. Now, this isn't some spontaneous boycotting from the internet users. It's actually a well-planned action by the regime, using 50-cent armies to write articles online and generate this new wave of Western hate. And their canceling and boycotting of the clothing brands just indicates that China has the ability to promote their vision of unity whenever they wish. Now, in terms of what unity is, for example, Chinese celebrities are forced to distance themselves from these brand sponsorships and partnerships or face social backlash from the Chinese online community. A quick search in China's Weibo top headlines are all famous Chinese influencers and celebrities canceling their partnerships with various brands. Funny thing is, the entire Chinese sports team has partnerships with Nike and Adidas or Puma, so they either play naked or use their Chinese brands instead to replace it. Now, hopefully, the performance of the Chinese brand matches up. Seems like some companies, though, are now caving to the pressure and forced to choose between buying Xinjiang cotton or getting boycotted in China. For example, HK Hong Kong-listed Anta Sports just issued a statement on Weibo saying that we have always been using Xinjiang cotton. As well, statements have been retracted by the likes of, say, Zara and Index Clothing. So it seems like to some companies, the Chinese market is still too lucrative for these clothing brands to give up. So why are they doing this? Well, boycotting Western entities isn't something new. And this one is just a reaction to the new set of sanctions being applied to Chinese officials. In fact, every time they do these moves, it's bound to include starting a hate train among Chinese people who can only consume the party media. Now, the propaganda is to spread hate against the West and to justify the actions of the regime. Those who fall to the brainwashing while having a systematic reaction, including, say, anger, for example, for the fact that the Western world is, again, as they call it, once again not viewing our great glorious nation as a rising power in the world stage. And this hate, and together with how the Western world is apparently not taking China seriously, these so-called patriotic thoughts are fueling the Chinese people's anger. With the help of the propaganda department and the foreign press, it's made even more unreal. Huan Chunying, who is one of the Chinese foreign spokesperson, tweeted out two pictures. Now, the left picture is a picture of cotton picker slaves from the 19th century, late 19th century to early 20th century. The right is Xinjiang's cotton workers in 2015. She did it again in a press conference on March 25th.
在美国，黑奴被强迫在棉花地里采摘的照片。
Now, I think this is so ridiculous. The Chinese CCP is criticizing the American slavery system from 100 years ago and comparing it to today's Xinjiang, trying to contrast how somehow in 2015 Xinjiang, their worker conditions was better. Now, this somehow is a deflection of criticism against Xinjiang Uyghurs who are being sent to concentration camps. Plus, the real issue here is the CCP has once again blended two separate issues together. This is basically their response. Americans had slavery over 100 years ago. Then now we can have it too. Just because someone did something evil, it doesn't mean that you have a free pass to do it too. You can't just take something that happened 100 years ago and apply it to yourself today. And if you really want to compare, we should probably compare the US today to the China today. And you can't take someone's actions from 100 years ago and tell them that you did it wrong, so we're going to do it right this time, which they definitely didn't do it right. And this is just cancel culture from China. It's again the idea that if you have done something wrong in the first place or in your past, you then have no credit in criticizing other people's behaviors. Now, the CCP is using its people again to achieve its agenda. But in reality, they don't really care that much about them. Check out this video.
看看公安我跟你说了啊，看看中央万达的公安啊。
So that was a woman protesting in front of an H&M store in her patriotic fashion, being arrested by the police later. What does this tell you? Well, under the regime, only bite when we tell you to bite, where to bite, how to bite, who to bite, what to bite, and why to bite. Do not make your own dog bites because you will get punished for it. Otherwise, things go out of control for the CCP. And do we see a disconnect here? Clearly, what the CCP knows and what the Chinese people knows is quite different. These people who are protesting and boycotting H&M today will likely be the same people who return tomorrow to buy the reduced price items. And they do this without feeling any sense of shame or in contradiction to their original boycotting. This Chinese poll asked if they would buy back Nike shoes once it goes down in price due to boycotting. As you can see, more people said yes than no. So really, this is just a case of no shame and no principle. Whatever the party tells you to do, you will do. Today, they want you to boycott, you do that. Tomorrow, they allow you to do and go buy H&M, you go buy H&M. They're just being told what the party wants them to hear and wants them to do. The CCP has turned the Chinese people into animals. Same thing happening here in the US though. We have the brainwashing and with all of the legacy media, people are following whatever the mainstream media tells them and wants to accomplish. Whether it's racial hate, it's diversity, whatever the term is, they're very willing to follow it. And then immediately go back to whatever they were doing before. Okay, let's go back to this event. So the issue that is important is the fact that Uyghurs are being sent to concentration camps. It's religious persecution, is ethnic persecution. The forced labor issue of these prisoners is now being twisted into this cotton production or cotton picking issue. Sure, every year, actually, in Xinjiang, they have a manpower shortage when it comes to picking cotton. So the government makes initiatives to send workers from all around China to Xinjiang to help out. And there is financial incentive for the workers to make good money there. But that isn't the point of this international criticism. The real issue is that people are being enslaved in prison camps for their religion and ethnicity. Now, since the Chinese people, I would say probably 80% to 90%, have zero idea that concentration camps even exist in Xinjiang. They just assume that what the Western world is focusing on is just on some cotton production. The fact that is there are for some reason thinking that the world wants to sanction the CCP's cotton production. Now the CCP uses this lack of knowledge because of suppression of information as a way to successfully shift the attention away from Xinjiang's human rights abuses to cotton. In their reports on news and any newspaper or TV, they don't ever mention the concentration camps. So then we get to these things. Stop Xinjiang cotton shirts and stop interfering with China shirts. And let's read some of the comments made on a Chinese forum by Chinese internet users. The top part says, they don't want to see local Xinjiang people get jobs and education. Poor and less educated are hotbeds for terrorism. Then the two follow-up comments says, stable, prosperous Xinjiang does not follow their script. And next line says, the human rights according to the West are causing famine and social chaos by sanctioning Xinjiang so they can't get jobs. No one here in the West actually wishes that the people in Xinjiang suffers under the CCP's brutal human rights persecutions. See, this is the problem. The Chinese brainwashing from the CCP works. And Chinese people think that the West just wants to see China suffer and wants to see China burn. And for some reason, they think that the West, with its sanctions, are targeting the Chinese people. In reality, it's to target the regime. Again, they also twist the idea that this is for cotton. Again, this is because the CCP never really mentions the idea of concentration camps exists. The regime uses hate, just as the far left uses hate. It's the same idea. And since China has a total control of system with regards to information and sources of information, most Chinese people don't ever hear about the real story. And it's the force feeding of propaganda for so long that people are so used to this type of hate promotion. First, they write stories about how the Chinese people's integrity and values are being harmed. Then they give a direction, telling and guiding the people where to aim their, I guess you would call them bullets, of justice or boycotting, whatever the strategy is at that moment. And then once that is done, say in this case it was boycotting, then the rest it just justifies itself. So whether it's burning the shoes, burning the clothes, or stop buying the brand, you get the reaction that generates it by itself. Now the irony is that some of the H&M stores in, for example, Beijing, they're still packed with people buying the products. Probably in the case that they got shut down and you can no longer buy anything from the store. But this also comes as one event happening in terms of sanctions. The Biden administration hasn't been able to take away Trump's trade war policies yet, because they secretly agree with the approach. They just don't want to mention it to give credits to Trump. The top US securities regulator on March 24th adopted measures that would kick foreign companies off American stock exchanges if they do not comply with US auditing standards, and require them to disclose any governmental affiliations. The Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act, signed into law by then-President Donald Trump in December, is aimed at removing Chinese companies from US exchanges if they have failed to comply with American auditing standards for 3 years in a row. The rules also requires firms to prove to the SEC that they're not owned or controlled by an entity of a foreign government, and to name any board members who are Chinese Communist Party officials. But if you think about it, what are the chances that a Chinese firm has no tie or no connection to members of the CCP? It's actually quite low for that. Now, if this does go through, it would actually delist a lot of the companies from China if that actually lets through. If the far left gets their hands on more control and propaganda, we're actually going to be seeing more of the same type of behaviors that's going to be happening in the US more and more as we go on. In our last topic today, Hunter, Joe Biden's most achieved and accomplished son, Hunter, is now facing a new round of scandals. According to political sources, on October 23, 2018, Hunter and daughter-in-law Haley were involved in a bizarre incident in which Haley took Hunter's gun and threw it in a trash can behind a grocery store near a high school. Delaware police began investigating, concerned that the trash can was across from a high school and that the missing gun could be used in a crime. At the time, Secret Service agents approached the owner of the store where Hunter bought the gun and asked to take the paperwork involving the sale. The gun owner, of course, refused to supply the paperwork, suspecting that the Secret Service officers wanted to hide Hunter's ownership of the missing gun in case it were involved in a crime. And the owner, Ron Palmieri, later turned the papers over to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, which oversees federal gun laws. Why was Biden's son getting Secret Service intervention for that case? We don't know. But it was also during a time which should not have happened because in 2018, the Biden family is nowhere near the level of security clearance to get Secret Service to the level where they should be intervening. Politico obtained copies of the firearms transaction record and a receipt for the gun dated October 12, 2018. Of course, Hunter responded to with a no to a question on the transaction record that asks, quote, "Are you an unlawful user or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic drug, or any other controlled substances?" End quote. 5 years earlier, he had been discharged from the Navy Reserve after testing positive for cocaine, and he and his family members have spoken about his history of drug use. Lying on the form is a felony, though prosecutions for it seems exceedingly rare according to Politico. Neither Haley, Biden, nor George Masiri, a lawyer for Hunter Biden, responded to requests from comments from Politico. Now, in addition to the laptop, now we have Hunter's pistol. Just the other day, CNN asked a question in a discussion on the Boulder shooting that gun shop owners should just ask if the buyers have any problems, say mental issues, or say if they feel anything weird, or if there's somebody watching them. And guess what? Hunter lied. So can other people. Today during the press conference, Joe Biden never got asked a question about his son's story, so we'll see how long that goes. As well, nobody mentions the laptop anymore. And that is it for tonight. Thanks so much for watching this episode. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. Share this video with your friends on social media, and follow us at Twitter, Parler, and Telegram. In any case we disappear from YouTube, you can find us at the following places. We also upload videos to YouMaker, and we have an email newsletter link for you to sign up to stay updated on this channel. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for your continued support. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.